Welcome to Measuring Success Right, the official podcast of the Marriott Student Review, a podcast for students by students, where we connect the leaders of tomorrow with the issues of today.
What I love about the law is the school of life is perpetually open. You will never graduate. If you're a good lawyer, you will never stop learning. At the moment you think you've arrived is the moment you are done.
Hello and welcome everybody to Measuring Success Right, the Marriott Student Review podcast. I'm your host today, Grant Frazier, and I'm very excited to introduce today's interview. Our guest today is Simon Cantarero, adjunct professor at BYU Law School. Simon graduated from the University of California, Berkeley with a BA in Political Economies of Industrial Societies, and then went on to get his JD at BYU's J. Ruben Clark Law School. Since graduating, Simon has kept himself quite busy. He currently serves on the Board of Directors for Utah Humanities, the Board of Trustees for And Justice for All, and is the chair of the Utah Supreme Court's Advisory Committee on Rules of Professional Conduct. On top of that, he also acts as regional legal counsel for the global mineral exploration company Boart Longyear, supporting its operations in the USA as well as its global corporate initiatives. Simon, welcome to the podcast today.
Thank you.
Okay, so I just want to dive right in, and I want to talk, we know a little bit about what you do now and the things that you pursue. We know about your career, but I would like to ask a little bit about what you were like before you went to college. So what was childhood like for you? What was your family life like, and what were you interested in when you were younger?
Well, I was born and raised in Central America. I was born and raised in El Salvador. So life was poor. I mean, there's no other way around it. Mm-hmm. I played a lot of soccer. I played a lot in the street. It was a war-torn country. I mean, it was in the middle of a civil war, so there was a lot of violence in the country. At home, I was very, very fortunate. I had two parents living under the same roof, which was not common among my friends. And they loved the children, and we loved them back. We felt safe. I have a very distinct memory of my parents working hard to provide for us. And so I learned a lot of lessons about honest work. I mean, you just have to do it and put in the work. Mm-hmm. So that was growing up until the age of 12 when the family immigrated to Southern California, to Los Angeles.
And what was the decision that led to your family moving here to the United States, and what was that like for you?
Well, my parents decided, actually my mother came first, I think 18 or 19 months, might have been 20 months before we came. The children came with my dad. But effectively, we were escaping war. I mean, that's the long and short of it. My parents were trying to keep us alive and safe. I mean, that's why we left. And I'll be honest, when we immigrated, I was old enough to know that we were leaving because we were escaping a bad situation. Mm-hmm. So I knew that well enough. But to the part of Los Angeles where we lived, where we moved to, I realized it wasn't much better. If we were leaving violence, war, we moved to a place that had gang violence. So war of a different kind. If we were leaving poverty, we moved to a place where we were very, very poor. So I felt in the first few years, like a great disappointment. Like, we came all the way to this country, and this country is no better, a little bit better, than El Salvador, that has its civil war. So I kind of felt cheated, frankly. It's like, I missed my friends. I mean, you're a young teenager, and I'm stuck in between two worlds because I don't speak English. The people at school don't look like me. I've never seen a white person. I've never seen a black person. And now all of a sudden, I live among black people. I go to school among white people. I don't belong here. I don't belong there. So I felt out of place.
That must have been an incredibly difficult adjustment. And living in California after leaving war-torn El Salvador and then eventually going on to get into the University of California, Berkeley, an incredible school, how did that transition happen for you? When you got to the United States, did you know that you wanted to go to university? Is that something that was on your mind?
No, not at all. In fact, the reason I got this idea that if I somehow got a formal education, that I could escape poverty. And I don't know where I got the idea. I'm sure I heard it somewhere. Mm-hmm. But I mentioned the part where we moved to Los Angeles was probably a 5-10 minute bike ride to the University of Southern California. And I would ride my bike around campus. And I would see all these young people. And I thought, I want to be like them, you know. Mm-hmm. That looks like a pretty neat life as opposed to, where I was living. So I had this idea that maybe that could be my ticket out. Mm-hmm. And it was reinforced. And I count myself very, very fortunate in this regard. The family my mother worked for, my mother was a housekeeper for this family. And the gentleman pulled me aside. And he sort of made a bet with me or challenged me. And he said, I bet that you could get straight A's. Now, I don't know where he got that idea from. Maybe he was just blowing smoke. But I believed him. And I think that probably made the biggest difference, is that I believed somebody who believed in me.
Wow.
And that's when I started thinking, well, maybe I can overcome my F's in spelling and in grammar because I didn't speak English. Maybe I can do something. And so that's what started this process. But while I was an illegal immigrant all through high school.
Wow.
And so when it came time I took the SAT at the time, and I scored pretty well. I had good grades in high school. And the guidance counselor said, well, where would you like to go to school? And I said, well, UCLA, or USC, which was kind of where I was riding my bike. Mm-hmm. And he says, great. So she's helping me with the application. And when she asked me if I had a social security number, and I said, I don't. And then when she realized that I was an illegal immigrant, she said, those schools are out of reach. Because, you're not really considered a, in-state student. You're sort of considered an international student, if they even consider you. And so I'm like, okay, well, what can be done? She says, well, until you get your permanent residence, my recommendation is go to your local community college in Santa Monica and see how well you do there. And then you can transfer to UCLA or any other school you'd like. And so that's what I did. I graduated high school. I went to the community college, and I basically got straight A's. And the counselor, by that point, I had gotten my green card, my permanent residence. And at that point, that's when the counselor said, well, you can basically apply anywhere you want to go.
Wow.
And so I applied to transfer. I wanted to go. I had this idea. My sister went to school at Cornell University in upstate New York. And I wanted to go sort of east. So I applied to Columbia, I applied to University of Pennsylvania, and all these other places. But when it came down to make a decision, I decided on Berkeley. And I went to Berkeley and got my degree there and loved it. Great decision to go there. I loved the campus. I loved the people. I loved my whole experience there was phenomenal.
Well, that sounds great. That sounds like you made the right choice then. I wanted to ask real quick about something that you mentioned. Was growing up as an illegal immigrant, was that something that you were acutely or strongly aware of for your childhood? Did you think about the fact that you were an illegal immigrant often? Was it something that shaped interactions in school? Was it something that, how did that make you feel or shape your childhood? Did it in any way?
Sure it did. I knew two facts. Mm-hmm. I'm the poorest kid in school. I'll give you an idea. I went to high school in Beverly Hills.
Oh,
okay.
A very wealthy area.
Probably one of the wealthiest zip codes in the nation. But I knew for a fact I was the poorest kid there. And in the beginning, By the time I got to Beverly Hills High, I could speak English well enough so I can handle myself. But before that, I went to Beverly Hills public schools, and I had to learn English. I didn't speak a word of English until the 7th grade. I mean, actually, the 8th grade, second semester, 8th grade is when they took me out of English as a second language class so I can go into regular English. So, I mean, second semester, 8th grade, considered good enough for English. So that's when I started speaking English. But I knew I was the poorest kid in that school, and I also knew that I was an illegal immigrant. Those two facts colored the way I behaved, because when I was a kid, I would get picked on and made fun of because I don't have good clothes, I don't speak right, I don't even look right. I mean, I'm like, I never belonged to an all-white club except for middle school. I was the only guy there and of color. And so I would fight back. And in one of those instances, in fact, my brother had the same experience, police had to be called. And, because you get into these stupid fights and you're a kid. Well, now you think, well, nothing's going to happen. When you're an illegal immigrant and the police is called, now I'm jeopardizing not only me staying in this country, I'm jeopardizing my mom, my dad, my sisters, my brother. I'm jeopardizing their future too. And so you had to cut it out. You had to behave, you had to be in your best behavior. So that definitely changed the way I saw things. It was difficult to sort of be a minority in that way, like the only kid who doesn't look like everyone else.
Of course.
But it was also the best thing that could have happened to me. Absolutely, without doubt, those difficult years were the best thing that could have happened to me professionally and today.
That's an incredibly powerful story, and I think it leads well into the question that I wanted to ask next, which is, when did you decide to go into law, and what aspects of your life might have played a role in that? And I can't imagine that having the police called on you because you're an illegal immigrant and worrying about jeopardizing the future of your family might play a role in that.
Yeah, so the decision to become a lawyer started when, I want to say probably when I was 14 or 15 years old, when I could speak English well enough to translate, be a translator for my parents. So my parents went to see an immigration attorney, and he didn't speak Spanish, which in Los Angeles, and now I think about it as a lawyer, that's a terrible business decision. If you're going to be an immigration lawyer, one thing you need to have is a Spanish, skill set, or have somebody who speaks Spanish there in the staff. But he didn't. My parents went to see this lawyer. They brought me along to act as translator. So I would translate what the lawyer would tell my parents about the process, the time it would take, the fees it would take, just the legalities of going from being an illegal immigrant to being a lawful resident in this country. And so that process of listening to the explanation from the lawyer, asking or translating the questions from my parents, and asking questions of my own, that's when it dawned on me, it's like, I want to do what he does. And I also saw, my mother is a third grade dropout, so she doesn't really write very well. So I would write the checks. Mm-hmm. And I knew the amounts of the checks that we were writing to this lawyer. And I also knew how much my mom and my dad were making. And I figured, what the lawyer is doing, it takes 2 weeks for my parents to collect, and he earns it in a 1-hour appointment. So I thought, I want to do what he does. Yeah, I can help people, but I can make more doing what he does, sitting on his butt and reading. And that it's not as hard on the body as what my parents were doing. So that's where the idea to become a lawyer came from. So it was this kind of helping people, of course, but also had this entrepreneurial gene in me thinking, well, this is a very good business opportunity. Why wouldn't I do it? People pay you. I mean, this is a dirty little secret, okay? People pay me to answer impossible questions. I mean, it's terrible questions, and they expect me to know. And half the time I don't know. And so I said, well, let me find out the answer for you. Why don't you pay me to find the answer for you? So it's a great way to make a living. I'd recommend it to everyone.
Well, that sounds great. All right, so I think that is a good segue into what I wanted to talk about next, which is a little bit of your career in corporate law. So as an entrepreneurial management major myself, I wanted to ask if there are any legal issues that you think startups or small companies might chronically or always overlook. What pieces of advice might you give to a startup that you think would be most helpful in avoiding legal pitfalls?
That's a great question. A lot of legal pitfalls can be avoided, frankly, with a simple rule. I mean, and it's basically the golden rule in business, if you will.
Okay.
You want to deliver to your investors, to your customers, what you would want to receive if the roles were reversed. In other words, to get what you want from your startup, you have to deserve it, right? So you have to treat the customer. Imagine yourself as the customer receiving whatever service or product you're delivering. I think that little principle will help you with avoiding legal problems when it comes to employment decisions or competitive issues. You know, you can't avoid someone suing you per se, but you can protect yourself from or defend yourself pretty well if you haven't, infringed on intellectual property, or you haven't taken, somebody else's business plan and adopted it as your own, and those kinds of things.
Yeah. Is there any type of issue that you see with startups usually? Is there any type of thing that any of them tend to do wrong a lot? Is there anything you would just tell people, don't do what these companies I've seen before have done? Obviously, you don't want to talk poorly about anyone in particular.
No, exactly. No, but I think in general that there's a little saying I like and that I use personally is I want to know where I am going to die, so I don't go there. In other words, what will fail? What will absolutely fail? And not just in your business, but, this podcast is about success, right? Well, this is sort of, I don't know, and I can't tell you personally what your success journey is going to be any more than any other listeners. But I can tell you where you're going to die if you do these things. In other words, what will fail in life? What will fail in business? I'll tell you one thing will fail: dishonesty. That will fail every time. Laziness, you'll fail. If you're unreliable, if you're flaky, I don't care what other virtues you have. You might be intelligent, you're good looking. If you're flaky, if you can't be dependable, you will crater. You will not handle the world well. So those things will fail as an entrepreneur. So entrepreneurs often have, let me put it this way. When I'm looking at a client, and I've had clients who are intelligent, hardworking, and energetic, and have integrity, these three are successes. But if you don't have integrity, you will not do well. I mean, I don't care. If you're gonna be a crook, you do not want them hardworking and smart. You want them dumb and lazy.
You want them to be bad, 100%.
Yeah, exactly. And investors who look at entrepreneurs are looking at the same thing. They're looking: is this management team? Do they say what they're going to say? Do they put the work in? And are they going to be upfront with this? And that's basically some rules of thumbs that I typically see. One of the big successes in life, and I'll tell you, going back to this idea of being dependable, I can think of a couple of guys who are partners, 50-50 and everything. And they are dedicated. If they get behind on their commitments, if they are behind stuff like, they will work 16 hours a day to make things right. Wow. Both of them will. And needless to say, they're great successes in life. Both of these men. I look up to them. They're mentors of mine. They've done very, very well. Not only in terms of financial wealth, but you just don't accumulate money and emoluments. You accumulate, friends too. So they are dependable with each other, and they put in the work. But going back to your question about startups, some free legal advice, if I may.
Yeah.
Get yourself,
Please.
Get yourself an excellent accountant, tax guy. Okay.
Okay.
Get yourself just have mentors, people you admire and want to be like. Avoid the ones that you don't want to be like. Avoid working directly under them. They make your life miserable. But if you have good mentors, get yourself a good accountant. And when you go to get legal counsel, get somebody who knows the space that you're going into. Not just any lawyer will do. You have to understand, does this lawyer understand business as much as he understands law?
So don't just reach out to your friend who you know is a lawyer, even if they do real estate or something. That's not what you want.
No, my uncle who's a lawyer, or my dad's friend who happens to be a lawyer and he knows another lawyer. No, do your homework. There's enough good lawyers that you can vet them, you can interview them. Because these advisors, if they're paid advisors, you want to make sure you're getting the best. And every paid advisor has an incentive behind them. You're paying these people for the advice, so they're going to be rewarded for the advice you give them. You want to make sure that it's good advice, sound.
Okay. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about your career outside of corporate law and in the work that you do for nonprofits, namely And Justice for All, which is an organization based in Utah, I understand, and you serve on the board of directors for it. Would you be willing to share a little bit about what that organization does?
Yeah, absolutely. We all have the same amount of time, right? So we want to spend our time on things and with people that mean a lot to you, period. And how much you care about it, how much time you spend on it will determine how much you care about it. Like for me, my family comes first. I spend a lot of time with my family. And Justice for All is something that I care deeply to the core. And Justice for All is the organization that basically provides free or low-cost legal services, legal representation to the most disadvantaged, to maybe the woman who's getting abused by her husband and needs to leave that relationship, where she can't afford a lawyer. And Justice for All, or one of the organizations that works within Justice for All, will help her get the legal representation and protection she needs at a low cost. Or people with disabilities who may be mistreated at work or taken advantage of because of the disabilities. That's what Justice for All does. That means a lot to me, and that's why I serve there, and that's what they do.
Well, thank you so much for sharing about that. And I was able to look into the organization a little bit, and I was incredibly impressed with it. And I imagine that it's probably a very fulfilling experience to get to use that law degree that you worked so hard for, and that is worth so much, to get to use it to help people who aren't able to afford the incredibly expensive costs that can sometimes come with legal representation. So it looks, if I'm correct in understanding this, that you just recently became an adjunct professor at BYU this semester. So what brought you to BYU, and did you always want to do work kind of being more academic than legal?
Yes and no. This started several years ago. In my law practice. A lawyer, there's many kinds of lawyers, but fundamentally, lawyers fall into two camps. Advocates, and you can think of trial lawyers, they sort of represent somebody. They give voice to someone who doesn't have a voice, or voice that person's interest. So a lawyer in a courtroom, for example. The advocacy part of the law, that's where I started. But as my career transformed over the years, I went from advocacy to more advisory, being at the table, giving legal counsel to the entrepreneur, to the business owner, or to somebody who needs legal advice in formulating a plan forward or solving a problem. So lawyers fall in typically one of those two. They either are consulting, advising, or they're advocating. So as I got into more in the corporate arena, I realized that I graduated law school with an immense amount of ignorance. Not at the fault of the law school, but at my own fault for not knowing these things early. So what I love about the law is the school of life is perpetually open. You will never graduate. If you're a good lawyer, you will never stop learning. At the moment you think you've arrived is the moment you are done. Okay. And so I started thinking about this. As a lawyer, I have 3 skills that I have to be a good lawyer and be a good service provider to the client. I have to be a problem solver. I have to have the skill of making, decision making. You have to sound decision making. And I also have to have a skill to offer professional judgment. And so those 3 skills, I thought, this is really important that I needed. Maybe other students do too. And in my volunteerism in my legal community, I became involved with the Utah Supreme Court and the rules of professional conduct, which are the rules that govern lawyers. So if you have a license as a lawyer, you have to live by these rules. If you violate one of these rules, you could be disciplined to the point that they can take your license away. You cannot practice law. And so those rules of ethics govern the legal profession. And I got involved in that. And the legal profession, the ethics of the legal profession with my corporate responsibilities kind of married. And I saw this. And I was asked to teach the rules of professional responsibility that lawyers have and judges to the law students. And that's why I kind of got involved in it. And it's very exciting to teach them, but also to teach them things that they're going to need to learn, but also add an element of real life experience, practice, not just mine, but other attorneys. So in my class, we invite lawyers who are in the criminal system. They either prosecute a crime, trying to put the person behind bars, and the lawyer who represents the accused. And they would come and share their experience with the students about the ethical way to practice those 2 different areas. Just yesterday, we had a couple of judges come and talk to the students and share with them the ethical responsibilities of judges. How do they see their professional responsibilities in relation to the lawyers that come before them and the people that they have to face? Sometimes they have to send them to jail or being prosecuted with a crime. So the judges have this responsibility. And so that's why I got interested in it, and it's wonderful.
Absolutely. And I think that's a really powerful idea, because I'd imagine as a law student, you're always swamped with homework. You have a lot of things you need to be doing, but to have attorneys and to have judges come in and discuss these actual cases that they've worked on, or to discuss the experience that they have, probably makes it feel more real and helps you to understand the weight that legal decisions can have and how it can affect the lives of multiple people. So I think that that's an incredible mission. Would you be willing to say the name of the class for any interested law students who might be listening?
This is the professional responsibility class.
Okay, so all of you law students, you heard it here first. Go sign up for that class right now.
And I think I'm having a wonderful time. The students, we haven't had finals exams yet, so you
don't know if they are yet.
You might want to have a different opinion there after the students take the final exam.
Well, I hope that that's not the case. I doubt it would be. It has been a pleasure to be with you today. I think this is a great place for us to come to a close. Before we go, Simon, I do want to ask you the question that we like to close with here on Measuring Success Right. Namely, how do you measure success in your own life, and what does success mean to you?
That's a great question. I'll tell you, this is my personal definition of success, okay? This is how I measure it for me. My success is how many people do I love and care about, and how many people love me in return. That's my success. The more people I love, the more people I care about, and the more people love me back, it makes for a rich life. And I've had a very privileged life since childhood. I've been very, very fortunate to have so many people in my journey who have cared a lot about me and mentored me and nurtured me. Like a little plant, they gave me water. And if I'm able to help others, younger students coming up, maybe who have some of the same obstacles that I faced, to be their mentor and their champion. I'm happy to do that. That brings success to them, which in turn brings success to me.
Well, that's an incredibly powerful idea, and I think a great way to measure success. And I think our listeners will agree with that. So again, Simon, thank you so much for your insights and for coming on the podcast.
You're welcome.
Well, that wraps it up for today. I would like to also thank our audience for tuning in. This has been Measuring Success Right from the Marriott Student Review. I am Grant Frazier, and we will see you all next time.
Make sure you subscribe to our podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, or SoundCloud so you never miss an episode. Be a friend and tell a friend about measuring success right.
This podcast is a project of the Marriott Student Review at Brigham Young University. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Marriott Student Review or online at marriottstudentreview.org.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect official policy or position of Brigham Young University or the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.